Because you are appearing before us for the first time in the 8th Senate, we'll just ask my colleagues to introduce themselves, and then thereafter you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. My name is Umar Kofi. I'm a vice chairman of this committee. I am from Kaduna Central.
Joshua Dari, chairman of Solid Minerals, fighting with illegal miners. I am from Plateau Central.
My name is John Eno, committee chairman, Cross River Central.
Central.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Yusuf Abubakar Yusuf, Taraba Central, member of this committee.
You know, the central of every state is always the hotbed of politics of that state. Yes, please. Over to you.
My name, Deputy Executive Secretary Services, acting in for the ES who is out of the country on assignment.
My name is Mohamed Sambo Duku, Director of Finance, UBEC.
My name is David Itama, Special Assistant to the Executive Secretary.
Baba Salisong, Director Admin UBEC.
My name is Michael Audi, Deputy Director of Finance and Accounts. Michael Audi, Deputy Director of Finance and Accounts.
Thank you. Again, you're welcome to this a meeting that we think should be a very short one. You know, it's I don't know how many times the Universal. Have you interacted with this committee before? Even in the previous assemblies?
No.
Okay, it's an indication of the change mantra, I guess, of the present administration, where everything counts. You know, even things that may have been largely ignored in the past. You know, so our letter was straightforward. UBEC is part of the agencies of government that benefits from statutory transfers. You know, so the committee is aware of that. The Committee on Finance is not necessarily involved in expenditure, but is involved in the revenues of the country. And that is why, while the Committee on Appropriation is looking at the line-by-line expenditure details from different committees arising from different ministries, departments, and agencies of government, the Committee on Finance is also looking at the revenue framework or the fiscal strategy paper that normally accompanies the national budget. You know, so that's why we've been invited. In that revenue framework, there is a line item for for UBEC. You know, and that is because of the legal requirement of a certain percentage, you know, the overall retained federal government budget or revenue. You know, so looking at what you have for 2016 is about 77.11 billion. Is the committee correct?
Yes.
It's about, yeah, that's the figure.
Yeah.
So what the committee is going to require from you is a brief about that figure. There's more than, you know, that I've already said. What was released for 2015 of that figure? And we are faced with a very complex budget year. Complex, we are looking for revenues everywhere. We got a deficit of more than 2 trillion. So, wherever we can save revenues, this committee is determined to do that savings. You know, so we need to know, and if it's possible, going backwards, even beyond 2015, what were the figures released? If you can go 3 years backwards, it will also give us some fair idea of where we are, because for us as a committee, it doesn't really make sense to continue to blow up our deficits year in, year out. Meanwhile, what actually takes place in terms of actual budget implementation is a far cry of that. So we need a briefing of that before we put final touches into this revenue framework. Because when the budget is passed, this revenue framework is going to be accompanying the details of the budget. That's what's going to guide the Minister of Finance and the Accountant General of the Federation in terms of the warrants and releases that are going to be made to UBEC. So we're seeking some little bit of more detailed clarification about, it doesn't just end with approving 77.11 billion. You know, it's a little bit much more than that. If at no other time, but today, at the present budget time of 2016, you know, so that's why you've been invited. And then anything else, we're not going to be too concerned. We're not going to be too concerned with how much, what you spend. That is up for your, you know, standing committee on UBEC in the Senate to determine. But we're concerned with the figure that is having some implication in terms of the revenue framework that has come from the Ministry of Finance. So you're welcome to this session, and we're hoping that it's going to be kept short as much as possible. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman. I think I have only one or two things to say. Universal basic was established to, among other things, provide free education for every Nigerian of age, school age. To what extent has this free education been available to every school-going age by the last 15 years? Because actually, I am aware that we are doing very well, but to what extent, how far have you gone, Malam? We all know you are doing now, but how far have you gone in this aspect? That's the only question I have.
Yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, sir, Vice Chairman, other members of the committee, Secretariat, I want to, on behalf of the Executive Secretary, thank the Chairman and members of this committee for giving us the opportunity to throw more light on the figure for our budget as captured in the 2016 budget. The Executive Secretary, like I said, is attending a conference in Ghana, and it's unfortunate that he's not been able to make it back to the country as we speak here. So he said I should stand in for him and explain what is contained in the budget. UBEC is a non-revenue generating agency of the federal government that came into law by an act of parliament that was signed in 2014. It is said, among other things, to complement the efforts of the state governments in providing free education at basic level to all children of school-going ages. The 2% of the federal consolidated revenue that is captured in the law, which is meant to be the funding source of UBEC, is compartmentalized into components like matching grant, where you have 50% to states and 50% retained for other components that will be enumerated as follows. Educational imbalance, 14%, good performance, 5%, special education fund, 2%, instructional materials, 15%, Teachers Professional Development Fund, 10%, UBE Monitoring Program Fund, 2%, then Implementation Fund is 2%. Those percentages are what constitute the components of UBE implementation as captured in the law. In the last financial year, the total accruable and what we got was 68 billion naira. And like I said, what we get is usually determined by the size of the budget. And this 2% is not of the total budget. It is of what goes to the federal coffer. It is a modest contribution of the federal government to support states in the implementation of this program. For this year, it is estimated that UBEC will get 77.11 billion naira, representing 2% of what will go into the federal consolidated revenue. And as I did mention in the components, when you translate the percentages of this distribution, you have 38.9 billion naira, 38.5 billion naira as matching grant, 1.042 billion naira would go to each state of the federation as counterpart. A state is expected to pay in equal amount to be able to assess this. And based on an action plan prepared by the state, we approve this and release same on citing evidence of payment of same in a dedicated account by the said state. Good performance is 3.8 billion naira. Educational imbalance, 10.7 billion naira. And instructional materials is 11.5 billion naira. Teachers' professional development is 7.7 billion naira. Then we have the monitoring and other activities of the headquarters. We have 221 million naira, and then 1.2 billion naira is the money that is meant to take care of national personnel audit. Special education, which is 2%, is 1.5 billion naira, and of these, we spend both on public schools and private providers. So far, this is how the breakdown for the 2016 budget is, component by component, as captured on the 77.11 billion naira meant for our budget size. Thank you, sir.
Actually, yes. Just some little clarification. You also spend for private schools?
Yeah, providers, special needs, yes. We do.
How do you mean special?
Private providers that are into education of the handicap.
Okay. You haven't addressed the issue of, in 2015, out of what was provided, what was released, and then about taking about 3 years.
Yes, the 2015 budget, as I said, was 68 billion naira. And it was released completely as captured.
As of September, what was released to UBEC?
September.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we're going to invite the Federation.
Yes, sir.
We're going to invite the Accountant General of the Federation.
Yes.
So just be sure of what figures are given.
What happened was earlier in the year, the release has not been regular, but as the year runs out, we were able to get all the amount allocated to UBEC. Yeah.
And then the previous years,
And also, because of the benefit of being a statutory transfer and all these things is a function of CRF, all these years we have never had problem of shortage in terms of release of funds. Normally, whatever is allocated is released. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chairman. I've been following your trend actually regarding your lot of progress which you have made so far. Now, before I have realized that you have challenges in infrastructures. You have challenges in infrastructures, especially roads and water. What strategy are you taking now to reduce that? Because most of the places where you have schools, you don't have that, you find difficult to have good roads, find difficult to have water. What strategy are you taking now to reduce that problem? Are you using
Yes. Okay, let me comment, sir. Actually, the whole concept of setting of UBEC is just to intervene, because state government have not been spending enough on education, and federal government became worried on that issue. So basically, we are always concentrating on education. We normally don't go into other infrastructural things like maybe roads and whatever. We restrict ourselves to classrooms, teacher development, and the providing of instructional materials. So other things, and even the components, even in the education sector, states are expected to pay their personnel costs. UBEC money is not used for personnel costs, it's not used for overhead. It is only meant for infrastructure, it's to augment for infrastructure in the state. And it's a sad story also. Some could not even access that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Up till end of September, you had a release of less than 20 billion, right?
Yeah.
October, November, December, you had the total release. By simple calculations, about 50 billion in 3 months. How did you match the performance of the release for the 3 months to your own performance in terms of meeting your obligation within that period?
Actually, what has been the practice is because normally this money has to get to UBEC before it is released to states. And this money has conditions attached to it like the counterpart. So for this reason, federal government knowing that states may not access it immediately, normally it is allowed to continue, it doesn't lapse. So states, whenever they had the opportunity of bringing their counterpart, then the money is released to them. So important is the release. If the money is released, it is available. And as at recently, Ebonyi used to have about 4 billion outstanding. The new government now came in and paid for this. So now they can access this money. So it is applicable to all states. So any state that bring its in counterpart, it is allowed to access the money. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Also, this quantum of money that is waiting for the counterpart counting of the states, where do you normally keep the money? Is it in the central bank, in the commercial banks?
Yes, sir.
How is the money?
With the Treasury single account, all the monies are in central bank. And as of January 27th, 2016, we have in the accounts of the states an access fund of about 64.6 billion naira.
As at
January 27th, 2016.
okay. About 64 billion.
Yes, sir.
So awaiting your own side.
Awaiting the states to pay in counterpart funds
Okay, awaiting the states.
and meet up some other requirements to assess same
So
for
it's
their
a-
states.
It's a carryover from 2015
Exactly.
to 2016.
Yeah, it's cumulative.
Implemented or affected? Because we all know that there's this education level, but how do you actually do it? Especially north versus south.
You see, sir, there are indices, and we receive reports from our zonal and state offices. We receive reports from suburbs that are meant to implement the program in the states. We receive reports from civil society organizations. We receive reports from faith-based organizations that are interested in the implementation of basic education. All of these areas of inputs add up to give us indices that will explain to us this state is lagging behind in this area and this state is moving ahead in this area. Even for the assessment of the matching grant, you can see that we have categories A, B, C, D, E, depending on how much and how fast a state is able to assess her own counterpart. So much so that on the table, where you see some states are still having close to 5 billion naira pending, some states don't even have up to 100 million naira pending. So these are all some of the things. And when the state assesses her own, you expect that the performance of such state will not be the same with the performance of the state that has not assessed much of what is meant for it.
Concept is an intervention, is argumentation to what states are supposed to do. Federal government is not taking over responsibility of managing basic or education from states. Still, it remains with the states. States are responsible. They are supposed to provide all these things you are talking about, but yet they are not. Even then, federal government decided in its own magnanimity to use 2% of its budgeted figure, which states have already collected their own share, and bring 2% out of it, and to support these states. And yet states are not even taking this money from the federal government. On the other part of it, intervention in terms of all these things. These imbalance funds is used for intervention in areas of imbalance where we think there is areas like Almajiri education is a kind of imbalance, boy-child education is a kind of imbalance. The intention is to correct all these things. So that's where we go into this. So federal government is only supporting the state but not taking over the responsibility of states for all these things. Thank you, sir.
Deposited in all these banks and invested. At a point, banks like Zenith or other banks have substantial amount of money in UBEC being invested, and over the period, I don't know, with the kind permission of the chair, if documentation that shows that by the time we are clearing TSA, both amount that is with this bank and the interest paid thereon on all these funds are submitted before this committee, so as to show to us that yes, what is in this bank is 12 billion, and what was given back or during the TSA clearing is including both the principal and the interest element. It will gladden the heart of this committee if document like that we can see. Number two, findings have shown that many of the state governors are diverting money that is given to them from the universal basic education in terms of the education imbalance and the monitoring of the application of this fund, I don't think it will be out of place for judicious application of this fund, 2% of the budget of the federal government, given to UBEC, to show to us, evidence to show that yes, this money were disbursed and they were adequately applied for the projects in which they are stated to be applied. I have my facts and figures, names and data of the state governors, where there is diversion of this fund. And the same UBEC will sign off on this money, that this money has been collected and that has been judiciously applied. Because your job does not stop at the counterpart funding. It is not about you are to get 1 billion, the state has got 1 billion, and you match it and say go. No. Your job includes for you to see that the 1 billion the federal government is supporting the state for is actually used for the purpose in which it was set for. So that is my own question, for clarification and also for that documentation. Because now we all mention TSC. But we know that there is more to it than we are saying. You told my our colleague now that 64 billion is standing to your credit on the TSC account, waiting for counterpart funding from the federal government. So,
yes, sir. When UBEC started operations in 2014, it had not started receiving the funding. But when it started receiving this funding, towards the tail end of 2014, all the monies meant for UBEC from 2014 all through to 2007 were kept in the central bank. So, 204. So when it discovered that these monies could be invested in commercial banks, I think this decision came in 2008. And since then, the monies meant for states and other components of the operations that were not immediately put in use were kept in various commercial banks at agreed interest rates. So, sir, when the TSA came, the principal and the interest were all together transferred into the Treasury single account. There is no trace of any part of it, because there was no different account for interest rate and the principal. It was the same account in any of the bank that had the opportunity to keep this money in custody for the federal government and the states. Then, for states diverting UBEC funds, yes, some state governors diverted substantial part of UBEC funds. Part of our responsibilities as an agency of the federal government is to monitor and ensure that money disbursed to states are spent in keeping with an approved action plan, which is submitted by the states, scrutinized by us, approved, and when states start implementing, we go out to monitor. And in the process of monitoring, where we discover a state has diverted part of the funds, there are punitive measures we take. For example, in 2012, Ekiti state government assessed about 800 million naira from UBEC upon deposit of an equal amount of 800 million naira, about 826 million or thereabout. So that coincided with a year when there was an election in the state. So the city government that took loan from a bank to provide the counterpart to assess what is in the coffer of the federal government lost an election. And the bank decided that the states had not met up the requirement for payback. And so, to have problem with the incoming government, they decided to withdraw their money. So this one we cannot say it was diverted. So Ekiti state government went ahead to implement part of the action plan with the 826 million naira assessed from UBEC. When we went out for monitoring and we discovered these anomalies, we sanctioned Ekiti State by ensuring that until they formalize and bring back that matching grant, they would no longer assess any form of funding from UBEC. And that is the position as of now. And so if there are other states in the same category, it's the same thing. So there is no way we use our monitoring mechanism to uncover an anomaly of diversion of funds and we keep our eyes closed. We've never and we will never.
You have a follow-up question on monies transfer to TSA?
Let my colleague go first.
Well, it's also important that the committee is furnished with indications of that.
Indication of
The Committee on Finance will need, full details of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm now beginning to get worried. If a state will borrow money to provide as counterpart funding, from day one, there's a problem with that funding arrangement. Because if they borrow from a bank, they borrow at a cost. Now, that means the counterpart funding they are giving you will be less by the amount of interest they are going to pay to the banks. So I don't know in the scheme of arrangement why a state government will be allowed to borrow to provide a counterpart funding. I think there's a fundamental error there. I may be wrong. 2, how would you encourage states to meet up with their own counterpart funding? 3, now this 64 billion naira, is it part of the 77 billion? So since it is no, we know that the 2% is the 77. So you now have a carryover of 64 billion awaiting states to pay their own, and you have now another 77 billion. Now supposing these states default again, so you continue to carry this money and the money will remain idle, and then we are looking for money to spend somewhere. So it doesn't make sense to me. In my opinion, probably what we will do, you may look at it. A state, at the end of the year, any state that has not been able to access this, collapse that fund and begin on the zero basis again. Otherwise, we'll continue to accumulate funds that are going to be idle and idle and idle.
And what my colleague has said is actually at the bottom of the whole issue, really. The ceaseless, stream of idle funds, that are left in the bank, whether it is commercial bank, whether it is the CBN, and like I said at the beginning, you've never had this kind of session with the Committee on Finance. So the fact that you're having it now for the 2016 budget, it's something that we need to be very sensitive to. I said at the beginning, it's a very unusual budget year, and therefore, whenever we find indications of idle funds, the Committee on Finance is not just going to approve the figure that it has before it, because it is a figure of law. It's not going to do so. So it's important that we're able to, like we said at the beginning, we're going to have a session with the Accountant General of the Federation to actually see what the performance for 2015 budget is. If as at the end of September, what was released to UBEC is what we find here, out of a figure of about 68.3 billion, what was released was 18.5. We need to find out what economic, this thing or accounting, whatever, that wouldn't have many bonds, a total of about how many billions got released to UBEC. What is the challenge of managing such huge funds? We need to actually find out what the releases have been for 2015 and for other previous years. That's going to guide what decision this committee takes in terms of what allowable sum is going to be budgeted or approved for 2016. So it's very important that UBEC is able to address the concerns that have been raised in terms of how much the idle funds continue to grow. Will they continue to grow forever, indefinitely? When there are other areas that we're going to put money into, and the monies won't even be enough for the expenditure. So it's very important that we get, the response from UBEC on the question from my colleague. Yeah.
Yes, sir. On the issue of states to borrow, provide counterpart, UBEC as an agency has no hand or knowledge of how states come about their counterpart. And naturally, if a state goes to a bank or any financial institution to borrow, the arrangements of payback is made between the borrowing state and the financial institution. And normally, part of which include these these irrevocable standing orders. That is what they do to recover their money with the financial institutions. We don't go into it. And no state comes to say, I went to bank to borrow the counterpart. It is when problems arise, like the case in question that we mentioned of Ekiti, that we get to know. Now, this accumulation of funds, there are states who have not assessed their matching grant for 2010, 2011, 2012, and the rest. So 64 billion naira is not only for 2015. It's an accumulation over years. Money meant for some states that have not assessed. Answer. All of this is the function of the enabling law. It is not just money kept without any law backing it. The entire operations of UBEC is based on the enabling law.
Based on that enabling law and the fact that you have been operating it,
yes, sir.
What have been your suggestions for possible amendments?
Yes.
What it means is that law
we've made several requests for amendments. I remember last year, there were frantic efforts by the ES writing several memos to the minister and to FEC to forward an executive bill to amend the laws of UBEC to meet up with the challenges of our time. But there is a limit to which an executive secretary can go anyway. Because a parastatal cannot give amendment to the National Assembly. It has to be an executive bill, which is a function of the minister presenting it in fact, and then it is the president that presents.
Yeah, but it's not only just that. If you are so bothered by those problems and by those issues,
we are terribly bothered, sir. We are terribly bothered.
It wasn't formally present those proposed amendments. It wasn't be formal. I mean, ways. Beyond an executive bill becoming an act. Once it becomes an act, it has become an act and a law of the country. Yes. Anybody, for that matter, is free to ask for amendment. It's free to amend.
Yes.
You have standing committees, for example, that directly oversight you. You mustn't be seen to have formally made proposals for amendment to them. But I think that if it bothers you enough,
we did
bothers you as strongly.
It bothers, we did.
Because as a committee on finance, we are concerned.
Okay, sir.
We are concerned about it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So
and this committee would not mind, for example, to propose a series of amendments to the existing law.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
So we are lucky, sir. We are lucky that for the first time we are meeting a proactive committee that is concerned with our plight. So we'll get back to the committee with even the previous write-ups and how frantic efforts have been made by the Executive Secretary and indeed the Commission to amend some of these areas that are allowing for idle funds in the Commission.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very interesting topic. You know, the main essence of this interaction we are having with you is how National Assembly will come to assist us. Because your progress is the progress of the nation, and it's our own progress. I think it is better for you, all the previous bills or proposals you have submitted, if we can arrange maybe a small meeting, maybe with you, with ES, particularly about the chairman, so that we go through them, we tell you how to go about it. Because if you don't succeed, the nation is failable. And if you fail, we fail. So the function of National Assembly is to assist all our parastatals, all our agencies to ensure that they move forward. And the only way you can move forward is get these laws done. So please, I want you to bring all the importance of what you think that you need our assistance. Let us arrange and have a meeting so that we sort them out and see how we can assist you. We can even go through the committees of education. Because they are all our colleagues. The finance chairman now, we can see the education chairman, then we can discuss it. If there is need, we call you again. That is the only way we can move forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. So I think, sir, I want to thank the chairman, vice chairman, and members of this committee, and to assure you of our readiness to provide all the necessary previous documents for further necessary action by this committee. And to say that while the idle funds are the functions of our laws that are not yet amended, we try to exhaust other avenues of this meeting and amicable resolution of the gray areas.
Inside Nigeria or outside Nigeria to augment what UBEC is doing.
As regards other funding from other organizations, we do have cooperations between some countries like Korea, China, and Japan. And in most cases, they come and cite projects in areas that they feel they are needed. So JICA has built a number of schools for us in Kaduna, Plateau, and Oyo also. And then Korea, currently last week we launched a program. They are building a model school here, model secondary school in Abuja. And also China, they are also doing their own, but mostly they come and meet with us, identify the areas where they want to come in, then we go with them.
So the assistance is in kind.
It's kind, yeah. Yes.
World Bank.
Yeah, World Bank, I think mostly it goes to the states. There are projects that are done by states, but UBEC is expected to monitor such projects. So for that one, there is a sum of monitoring fund that is passed through UBEC to help them monitor the activities of the state's project. Yes.
What is the quantity over time?
Well,
The bottom line?
no, it's not. It's not. Where?
I don't know where you say it's not.
No, it's not. We are not talking of millions of dollars. Yes, we are talking of monitoring. But I will get the information from the project people. Yeah. And forward to the. Yes.
Thank you.
So that is the second information the committee is going to require. First, isn't it? Yeah. It's the TSA, matter, and then because of the timing of this session and the fact that we got the deadline to want to pass the budget, that is why we made no noise at all or no issue about the fact that the ES himself is not here. But before this matter is concluded, we need to see the ES. The ES needs to interact with this committee. There are too many things this committee is trying to achieve, but from this revenue framework, which is why we invited UBEC. It's very important that because there was no formal communication that it was going to be represented. So one of the things we would have done would have been to say this session on hold. But it's our respect for UBEC and those that have come has made sure this session has held. And it won't be closed, without having an interaction with the ES himself as soon as he comes back. It's very important.
Okay, sir. As soon as he is back, we'll put this across to him and we'll liaise with the Secretariat. Yes, to get it in an appropriate time from you so that we come along with the ES.
Yeah, as quickly as possible when he comes in.
It's okay, sir.
Do you have any more issues with him? Okay. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Yakubu Gambo, Deputy Executive Secretary Services of UBEC.
Okay, this is the first time UBEC will be defending a budget. What is your experience of this?
It's revealing. It's quite revealing, and we are glad to appear before this committee. And the position of the committee in terms of their knowledge of how things should be done and how it bears on our operations is quite good. We appreciate.
Okay. We discovered from the interaction that there are some of the states that don't pay their counterpart funds. Can we identify those states?
Yes. A few of such states are Nasarawa, Ekiti, Taraba. Borno recently assessed her own. Benue too, their own. Plateau, partially their own. And Ondo.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.